This is episode number 8 from God's podcast. My name is Isra, and this is Brandon Wilcox. I already know Brandon because I received one amazing reading that's going to be up soon. And yeah, welcome, Brandon, to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Brandon. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was kind of make this episode a little bit of a recap to the session to kind of explain also your work and how you got to it and how you even you're doing this full time. Like this is you're really embodied in this work. So I want to know, how did you get that?
Mm, okay, yeah, cool. Well, it's kind of a long story, but I'll give you the short version for starters, and then you can
Yeah.
ask questions of anything you're curious about. But I got into this work when I was maybe like 14 years old. I had
Mm.
been very clearly searching for something, even as a young kid, where I just felt this sense of there being more to life than what I was being shown. I remember many nights I would look out into the stars and I would just feel lost amongst the universe. And I would tell my mom that she wasn't my real mom, that I had alien
Mm.
parents, or that the sun and the moon were my real parents. I'd say stuff like that when I was a little kid. So there
Yeah.
was always this sort of connection there. And when I was about 14, I had this really amazing woman, Avani Dilger, who helps
Mm.
teenagers stay away from addiction and find other tools
Mm.
to find what they're looking for. And so she introduced me to a Reiki teacher. And so I got
Mm.
trained in all the levels of Reiki, became a Reiki master teacher. And then by the age of like 16 and a half, I started doing more formal intuitive training, or psychic training, whatever you want to call it. And
Mhm.
that's a pretty in-depth spiritual program community. It goes on for like 10 years of training essentially. And so I was in the early days of that, in
Mhm.
my early days, anyway, as a 16-year-old, doing readings and going through the programs. And then a couple years later started to teach classes there and started to hold hands-on healing clinics for the public. I would do channeled angel healings.
Mm.
I would do all sorts of stuff there, as well as running courses. And so I had been doing it for a long time as like a side job. I'd go and work my day job, and then I'd go there in the evenings, and then I would see clients
Mhm.
one-on-one outside of work. And then it evolved to where I would take a couple days off of work.
Mhm.
I would only work a 3-day schedule one week and maybe a 4-day schedule the other week at
Mm.
my day job. And then I would see clients and teach and the other stuff
Mm.
outside of that, all while being a single dad. And so it was just doing a
Wow.
lot, it was just doing a lot
Yeah.
all the time, but sticking with it. And so then finally I hit a point in my own spiritual journey where my guides were like, okay, it's time for you to go all the way into this. And I was like, ooh, that's really scary. I'm a single dad, and a lot of stuff had happened financially that was kind
Yeah.
of burdensome. And so it was this huge leap to leave the safety of a corporate job, benefits, all that security, and to just
Mm.
say, okay, I'm just going to do this. This is what I was put on earth for. This is what I'm most passionate about. But the second that I went full in and decided to do it, somebody booked 40 sessions because they had their own course they were running, and they booked one for everybody who was in that course. And so that was just
Mm.
like, okay, here's a sign from the universe
That's
to
really that like
help
the
get
the
me
best
going.
sign ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so fun. Like sometimes I feel like almost God or universe, whatever you want to call it, it answers you back. This is your purpose. You're supposed to do that. And it is really funny sometimes because we worry about little things and we're like, no, this is too we were we have too much responsibilities to be able to do that. And all of a sudden everything was already set for you.
Hmm.
So you wouldn't have to worry anyways, but we still worry.
Yep, absolutely. And even
Yeah.
once even once you're on the path, it's easy to fall into that
Yeah.
state of worrying about things, not being sure what the next step is, how it's going to go. But as you
Mm,
practice tuning into your own intuition and being able to surrender, you start to experience that when you're in alignment with yourself and when you're in alignment with your path, that the universe always provides you what you need for your next step. And you start to have experience
mhm,
of that over and over again. And then, even if I have no idea what I'm going to do next month or 6 months from now, whatever, I know that my next step will present itself to me and there will be something there to keep me going. And so when I was first starting as a spiritual entrepreneur, every month it was like, well, I could either make it or break it and totally tank this month. It's
mhm.
complete sink or swim, every
Yeah,
single month for the first year. And then you
yeah.
start to go, okay, as long as I stay aligned, whatever I need is
Mm,
provided for me. The
mm,
tricky part for most people is they get out of alignment. They have all these preconceived notions and
mm.
ideas of what they're supposed to be doing, what they should do, who they should be, what that path is supposed to look like. They see somebody else
Yeah.
walking a certain path and they think, oh, I could never do that, or oh, that's what I want to do. But they don't really take the time or know how to actually connect with what's really their path and their purpose and then align
Mm,
themselves with it. They get caught up in all of the thinking and really getting in their head about it and all of the pressures from society and the conditioning that we have. And then
mm.
it's really hard to take an aligned step forward. And so they just don't take a step forward oftentimes. They just kind of stay stuck, kind of baby stepping into it,
Yeah.
playing with it. Am I in? Am I out? What's going to happen? Um,
Mm,
so that's always a interesting thing for me to try to help people with when they're like, can you help me connect
mm,
to my purpose and move forward? Because personally, I've never had any doubts. It's never been a question
mm,
for me. I always knew what my purpose was and what I was meant for as soon as I
mm,
found this type of work. And so it's a tricky one for me sometimes to help people with because I'm like, I've
mm,
never had the question, but I know how to help people get aligned with that, how
mhm,
to peel back the layers of the conditioning, the doubts, the shoulds, the expectations. Because sometimes people don't even know what to ask for, what to create,
mhm.
because their limitations keep them from even being able to see what's possible. And so that
Possible.
thing that's
Yes.
really meant for them, it's just outside of their awareness field because they don't even
Mm,
believe it's there. And so you kind of, help someone to move through those layers of energy first and then they're like,
mhm.
there it is.
Yeah.
Then now I can start moving forward.
Yeah, a lot of times for me personally, it was also like your experience. It was more like once I stepped into a certain thing, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do step by step. There was no question or I don't know how it's going to happen. I genuinely don't. But I really do know what to do. And it's almost like it's ingrained in my DNA and I don't have to do anything consciously to do it. I just know this is what I'm supposed to do. And most people truly don't get to experience that. I'm kind of sad that they don't get to experience that because Hmm. This is kind of moving with the universe. Also, being very aware of yourself would make you very easily see what your purpose is. But most of the people put masks on and different conditions, and dad did this and mom did that, and all
Hmm.
that gets just to the surface. And it's almost like we really pass down perception. It's not even an illness or something that a pattern like my dad is an
Right.
engineer and you're an engineer now. It's really not that. It's really the perception of things that we pass down. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about your family, actually, how when you were telling your mom, I feel like you're not my mom, I have a different mom and all that, how did she react?
Well, I was so young at that point that I don't genuinely remember, but
Hmm.
how she communicates to me, as an adult about it, she always made it sound like she was very supportive of that, kind of
Okay, okay, that's
encouraging of
good.
my imagination. I do have memories of drawing alien planets and
Mm,
what I considered alien friends on those planets, and I would come up with the
mm,
names for what they were and how much of it was
wow.
a genuine connection versus how much of it was encouraged creativity. Who knows? Maybe a little bit of both. But
Both.
she was always supportive of that. Yeah,
Mm,
my dad's side of the family, because it was a split home, he's the more like Orthodox Christian, like type A personality
mm,
sort of thinking, who wouldn't be into any of this sort of stuff. So I
yeah.
had a little bit of mix, a little bit of both.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. You don't see that a lot. This is like a interesting mix that one was really accepting and the other one was really like not so very much accepting of this. How
Yeah,
did
and that
you feel about it?
Well, that was intentional. As a soul, I had wanted to be able to have an experience of two different worlds growing up in. Like my dad's house, it was a very nice
Mhm,
house in a very nice neighborhood with really great neighbors, just kind of the typical, um, uh, I don't know, there's no typical
mhm.
child experience, but you would say
Yeah.
like the upper middle class experience. And then my mom usually struggled with more of the like poverty, the difficult relationships, the
Mhm,
hard things. And so I got to go from one
mhm,
environment to the other and switch. And that was a
mhm,
big part of my soul's learning to switch between the two. But the interesting thing
mhm,
on your point, like what you're alluding to with parents
mhm,
and their perceptions being a big part of how we grow up and how we see the world.
mhm,
Living in Boulder, I have a lot of friends where their parents were really spiritual and they would take them to ashrams or they would encourage that
mhm.
sort of thinking and way of life. And the funny thing about it is
The
sometimes that
kids would like it.
actually, sometimes, yeah, sometimes they'd really like it. And sometimes it would actually be its own barrier because those kids
Mm,
wanted to have their own sense of identity, their own sense of who they are.
yeah.
And so they wouldn't want to do it because their parents were super into it. And
Mm,
so, versus, the typical thing of seeing somebody who comes from a certain religious household
yeah.
and they have to kind of be able to break free from that to find their own
Mm,
unique path. There's pros and cons of both sides of it that set us up for what we're going to be interested in, what we're going to want to find. And so I kind of liked growing up in a way where neither one was super heavily pushed on me.
mhm,
Kind of got to find my own way with it, and that's kind of how I raise my son too, is I just show him whatever he's interested in. People assume that as a spiritual teacher I'm
mhm,
like teaching him all these tools and referencing everything to it for him, but I'm like, no, I don't really say anything unless he's curious and asks. If he starts the
mhm.
conversation, then I'll share more with him, but if he's not interested, then I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
he's a whole human that has his whole life experience and he gets to choose where
exactly.
he wants to go with that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that way of raising actually. Um, because people are sometimes obsessed about teaching the child from A to Z, from 1 to 100, and all these things, but it doesn't really necessarily prove any knowledge or any kind of experience or anything actually. So it's just filling up the child's mind with information that they might not even ever want to need. It's not
Yeah.
even in their
That I
purpose.
started
It's
my life being born,
and it's my purpose even from the moment that I was born. Even all the bad things that I had happen to me, all those were my purpose. But
Mm.
when I was younger, at first I was like, oh no, I have to like dig myself out of this first and then I can go to my purpose. And later I realized all of it was my purpose. So I wanted my child to have it easier to step into their own way and do their own things. Because my child might be, I don't know, a dancer or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they like
Mm-hmm.
dancing, maybe they like ballet, maybe they like playing football. I have no idea. But it shouldn't be that they have to learn whatever I did.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. The educational systems and society as a whole, it's
Mm.
set up for one very specific type of human being, and anyone who doesn't fit into that mold, they might have a hard time moving through that system. Like for me as a kid, they knew something was a little like different about me, and doctors would suggest that I went to like snowboarding schools where I would snowboard all day and then do a few hours of schooling because I could be very hyperactive. And I think honestly, everybody needs a certain level of movement. We're not meant to be so sedentary and just sitting there receiving instructions all day long. It's not how humans are evolutionary accustomed to
Mm.
learning things. There would be a lot
Yeah.
more like apprenticeship, learning hands-on, more movement involved, even if there is certain studies that happens. And so being able to identify who a soul is and what's needed for their path is really, really useful. Like if my family had listened to that doctor and sent me to one of those schools, it probably would have saved me from a lot of
Yeah.
trouble that I got in and a lot of hardship that I had in school if I was moving my body. But at the same time, the
Mm.
reason I even got into the intuitive work was I was living in a house with like seven other boys and a couple girls. And the guy who was in charge of the
Mm.
household, he got readings for all of us. And the lady would read to see
Wow.
what each kid specifically needs rather than just trying to have this one solution, one
Wow.
thing that you can sell. It's like, no, what do they? This is a unique individual soul. What do they need? And when she got to reading me, she's like, oh, this kid needs this work. He needs to actually come here and learn
Mm.
this stuff and do that. And thank God somebody was able to see me in that way, to see what I actually
Mm.
needed to help me. You know, another fun story along those lines is I sometimes
Mm.
intuitively check in to see what my own son needs, what would be helpful for him. And I
Mm.
was doing that, and I was like, I saw that he needed to do horse therapy. And so I got him into horse therapy where he would walk this big horse named Duke around, and occasionally he would ride it and do different things. And I also saw that he needed a new bike, and that being able to ride his bike was part of his journey. And the funny part was, I went and got an astrology reading afterwards, and the astrologist was like, "Yeah, your son
Mm-hmm.
needs horseback riding and mountain bike riding." And I was like, "Oh, how cool." You know, it shows up in the
Amazing.
reading too, but when you're living connected to your intuition and willing to see somebody for the uniqueness that they
Mm.
are, then you can actually help them with the tools that they need, right? It's easy to want to give our kids
Mm.
what we needed or what we wished we had to try to do it better. But oftentimes,
Mm.
parents then just give them a new set of problems, you know, which is it's gonna happen no matter how great of a parent you are. It's gonna
How
happen.
great of a parent you are,
Yeah.
that's true. But still, we can at least take a little bit of the hit off of our children. I hope so. One question that comes up as soon as you said that you tune into your kid, how do you do that? Maybe people want to do that with their own kids.
Uh, it's pretty natural for me at this point because, he's around all the
Mm.
time. And so I'll just notice if he's having like a mood fluctuation or if he's
Mm.
bored, whatever's going on with him. I'll just notice it behaviorally. And then I'll intuitively tune into the energy of what would be the solution to that, what would be helpful to that. And so for me, it's just second nature because I've practiced tapping into my
Yeah.
intuition intentionally over and over and over and over again. And so how I did that
Mm.
in the first place is I learned specific tools. You know how people can read like tarot cards or runes, or
Yeah.
they have some sort of thing, even Native Americans, they might do crystal gazing. And so they have an object and the symbols on the object mean something. I
Mm-hmm.
teach that in a visual way where
Oh.
I tell someone to close their eyes and I have them visualize a symbol, and the different parts of that symbol mean certain things. And so it gets you out of your
Mm.
thinking mind and into your creative mind when you're visualizing. And so then once
Mhm.
you're in that creative mind, then you start to see images. Then things start to come to the surface and you get more and more of an answer. And so it's kind of like a muscle. Everybody has this third eye
Mm.
muscle, It's just been atrophied. We've been conditioned not to use it, right? Like when I was a kid, I remember I would see ghosts in the house and I would call my parents and say, "There's somebody in here. You should come back home." And they would say, "Stop being a baby, go to the neighbors. There's nobody in there," right? It gets invalidated. They say, "Oh, that's not real." And I remember
Mm.
one experience of a kid, I kept seeing this nurse looking ghost in the basement. And they were like, no, that's not real. There's no such thing. It turns
Mm.
out that the people that had lived in that house previously, the wife had gotten really sick and they had a like at-home nurse that was giving care to the wife. And there's this whole incident and drama that went
Wow.
on in the house around that that left this energetic signature that I was bumping into over and over
Yeah.
again as I was moving through it. Um,
Mm.
and so, anyway, you have to just reactivate that muscle. Everybody has it. And when you learn,
Mm.
how to exercise it, then it just starts to get stronger and stronger and open back up again. Uh, and then it's easy to see, to be tapped into
Mm-hmm.
that intuitive part of
Mm-hmm.
us. Because it is our
It,
nature, right?
yeah, our nature is actually to be intuitive, so that's very true. Is there like a small exercise that we can do to strengthen, like a little game or something funny maybe that we can do to exercise that muscle? Like I don't know, for example, to
Mhm.
guess what color the next car that's coming from this next street or something.
Yeah, you can absolutely play games like that. I had a friend who we would do that. We'd sit in the hot tub and he'd say, "Okay, send
Mhm.
me a color and I'll tell you what color it is." And we would see how many
Yeah.
times we could do it back and forth, getting it right, and we would get up to like 37 because he was very intuitive naturally. He was really good
Mm.
at it. So you can play games like that too. You can close your eyes and you can visualize yourself in the center of your head, kind of
Mhm.
behind your forehead and in between your ears, and you can imagine a scenery in the center of your head. And you can see like a mini you that's sitting there on a throne, on a stump, a log, a chair. But you can be right there in the center of your head in that scenery with no other people in it, no other animals, just you. Could be a nature scene, or it could be a room of your choice. And just by starting to bring your attention and energy to the center of your head, you're bringing energy through your pineal gland, through your sixth chakra, into that third eye muscle, and starting to awaken it. And then you could visualize out in front of you whatever image you want to see. You could ask to see an image of a cat. And you just want to see, like, oh, do I see that cat really clearly? Is it kind of two-dimensional, kind of, vague, opaque? Or is that cat 3D? You can really see each little strand of its fur, its eye color, you can see in great detail. And then you could even visualize throwing a ball of yarn out there for that cat to chase. You could let that image not just be 3D, but also moving, kind of like the
Mm.
magazines in Harry Potter where they're moving images. You can see that moving image out in front of you. And that's you starting to tap into your visual abilities. That's you starting to work that third eye muscle. But if you want to take it
Mm.
one step further and make it a little more personal, stay in there. We'll go one step further. Uh, Let that cat and that ball of yarn just run away from your field of vision. And then ask to see, what would you look like as an energy form? Almost as if someone's looking at you through a thermal lens, a thermal vision lens. If you were just to see the energy of you, almost like a gingerbread man outline, but maybe it has a few colors in it. It's kind of an energetic makeup. And you might just see what's the main color that's around that image of you.
Mhm. Slightly orange.
Cool. Yeah. And then you visualized it, you've got into the creative, intuitive brain. And from there, you could go, what does this particular shade of light orange remind me of? What's a person, place, thing, even a
The
scene?
sun.
The sun?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then you can apply that to looking at your energy. So it might be, I'm kind of a sunny person, sunshiny energy around me right now, warm and inviting. You can be a little poetic in what that might mean. And you can get a sense of, okay, that's one of the energies that's around me right now. And then you might pick the next color and ask the same question, and start to understand some of the energies that are all around you. That's one way you
Mm.
can kind of check in with your energetic state. You might have some cues from your thinking, from your feeling, but you're used to plugging into those senses. When you plug in visually, you get a different quality, more of a neutral viewpoint of what energy.
Very neutral. That's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say. And not only neutral, but very relaxed. It's almost like I forgot everything that was around me right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was very focused. And when you said the thing that you do with the colors is very, very interesting. I have synesthesia, so it's very easy for me to see colors and know exactly what color fits with what. So as soon as you asked the color, it was way easier for me to tell.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and
Yeah.
synesthesia is a byproduct of being tapped into your spiritual self because your astral form, your spiritual body that you
Mhm.
have, it perceives beyond the confines of the five senses that we
Mm,
have as a physical body. And so people sometimes, can smell a color or, they see a certain
yeah,
number in their
I have
head,
that a lot.
all those
Yeah.
sort of blending of the senses. A big part of that is, yeah, you being tapped into your astral body's ability to sense things, to pick up on things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I do have astral projections as well.
Hmm.
So that makes absolute sense that you said that.
Yeah, your astral
Yeah.
body is very like clear and strong. You go on a lot of astral adventures and you kind of have like a
I
second life
know.
you're living up there. Yeah.
I know. I know I have a double life. It's
Yeah,
really, really
and
crazy.
the great thing about tapping into your intuition is most people they already know how to use their physical senses. They already know who they are kind of physically and emotionally. But how do you get to know who you are spiritually and how do you actually bring that
Mm,
into the world? Well, through your intuition is one of the gateways to really being able to live as the spirit that you are more. Because you stop viewing the world through the lens of the physical body, of the emotional body, of the mental body, and you start to view it through the lens of spirit, which, as you noticed, was more neutral. It's kind of more amused, more lighthearted.
yeah.
It's just this pure perspective of what is, instead of
Mm-hmm.
all these sort of safety mechanisms,
Yeah.
biological programs, thought patterns that we're conditioned to. All of that
Mm,
stuff is like what they call the matrix when people talk
yeah.
about that, the conditioning of the world. And so when you're looking through your sixth chakra, through your intuition, you get to see beyond the matrix, the conditioning of it all. You get to see the truth.
Mm. We kind of spinning back to where you said when we were doing the reading, you said there is something on my third eye. I think protection. I think it was a protection thing. I don't know exactly, but the heart had protection, and I think the third eye. Maybe that is why I don't use. I'm kind of scared to use it, but I'm using it all the time anyways.
Yes, exactly. We're using this stuff all the time anyway, and anything
Mm,
that we could see or tap into, it's already there. And the
mm,
being able to be aware of it actually gives you more power, not less, because then you can
mm,
actually do something with what you see. But we're so conditioned societally that if you open up too much spiritually, you might be condemned as being crazy. It might make you
mm.
ungrounded and not connected to the world. You might not be able to
Yeah.
function as well, whatever. And that's why having spiritual tools so that you know how to work with what you open up to. Right. It's like
Mm.
with my students, I'm never going to go in and just zap them and open up their third eye or activate their Kundalini and send them into this big thing because
No.
they wouldn't be ready for it. They wouldn't know how to integrate it or what to do. And so
Mm,
instead, I teach them tools that give them the ability to feel safe, to open up more and more. They naturally can open up to their intuition more and
Mm,
more because they have tools to work with what they see, work with the places that they're opening up into, the abilities that they're opening up into. And so usually when somebody
mm,
has some of those, then they feel safe to own their own spiritual gifts. They can bring it into the world,
mm,
use it, speak to it, all that good stuff. Yeah.
mm. Please tell us some of the amazing things that happened during your readings or teachings that you have.
Oh, okay. Some reading teaching stories.
Yeah, please. I love them.
Huh. Man, that's a big question because there's been so many of them. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. One of the things that has been really profound is being able to give someone a spirit to spirit hello, being able to read them and see them so deeply that they
Mm,
reconsider everything that they know to be true about their life and what's possible for them. You know, when I was
mm,
first working at the Psychic Institute, I'd sometimes read people and then they'd be so blown open that they would be like, all right, I'm going to do this work for myself. And then they would stick with it
mm.
and do it for 10 years following that. You know, so that's
Wow.
that's a really touching experience for me. But there's also the healing stories too, where people have come in and had instantaneous healing of skin issues. I had someone who had
Mm.
had stomach problems for a year after they had done an ayahuasca ceremony, and the stomach problems just weren't going away. And I gave them one hands-on healing, and they never came back. And their friend called me or emailed me like 8 months later, and they're like, "By the way, that person's stomach issues never came back. They're totally fine." You know, there's a
Yeah,
lot of
that's
really cool
amazing.
healing stories in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And also the thing is, for I get to experience say or tell this in a different way because I already had a reading with you. So I did feel that way. It was really like a checkpoint. I was just thinking about it the other day and I was like, this was really a checkpoint. I was meant to be there. I was really meant to be there. And I experienced a lot of people being able to read me accurately or maybe predict the future and a certain thing that would happen. But you was able to read me in or let's say another layer in around me that was like just deeper, like for
Mm.
example the communication stuff. Did you like improve over time? Did you like how did you get to reading the communication styles and all those things? That's very interesting. That's
Mm.
really deeply seeing someone.
Yeah, right.
I don't
Because
remember ever being seen like you have read me, like you read me to fells.
thank you. Yeah, and the difference, if there is one, between the type of reading that I do and teach and some of the other ones is some other readings, they're looking at patterns. You know, everything has a
Mm,
pattern, and so they can see, okay, here's the patterns that are going on in your life, you know, within your
mm,
ego personality, and they can give you some fun information about like, oh yeah, this might happen, or this is a
yeah.
pattern of yours, whatever. But seeing somebody as the soul that they are beyond those patterns too is where they really go, ah, okay, there's the healing.
Yeah,
There it is.
I know it's
Um,
coming, yeah.
so I have people that read the communication styles and all the type of stuff that I read for you within like 3 months of training. You know, they're reading that right off the bat. And
Really?
and I definitely improve over time. You know, that's the really fun thing is with readings, you get to see
Mm,
people in patterns over and over and over again. And so you get it's like a master class on every area of life. You know, for a while, I would do
mm,
relationship readings over and over and over again. Then I would do health readings over and over and over again. I'd do schizophrenic
mm.
people readings over and over and over again. Like I'd have all these career readings
Wow.
over and so you get to see all the patterns and you get to let go of any preconceived notions, illusions, lies that you're carrying about anything, and you get to see the truth of it. And so over time, you start to have more and more wisdom as to what you can see, how you can speak to it. So you do sharpen your skills, but sometimes. Um, some of the best readers I have are people that are really early on. They're like 3 to 6 months in training and they're just so enthusiastic, so open. They're so curious. They don't think they're a good reader yet. They might not even think that they're seeing anything yet. I have some students that'll go, I'm not sure if I'm seeing, and then they'll give this amazing reading, and the person will come and meet me in the room afterwards and they'll be like, yeah, that was spot on, really good. And the student reading didn't even know if they could see anything, you know? To them, they're
That's
like, I don't
right.
know. And
Yeah.
so when your spirit gives you that information, when you're open to receiving it, you know, when you get out of your own way.
Mm,
So it is a fine-tuned craft for sure. And it's one that's natural enough that it can be picked up pretty
mm.
quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's inherited, it's already in us, we can use it. It's just a matter, I mean, even you said, I thought it was a matter of believing that you are a good reader, but since you're saying that people themselves don't even know that they are like good readers, like
Hmm.
this is, yeah, that this is interesting. They don't even
Yeah.
actually believe in themselves. They're like, ah, I'm probably
Uh-huh.
not seeing anything, and still they are amazing readers.
Yeah, yeah, because sometimes when people hear the word see, they assume that you're going to have
Mm,
this crystal clear visual movie screen type visuals.
mm,
And there's some people that do. And I would say at some times I do have that. But I gave a
me
reading the
too.
other day where I felt like I was just looking at the back of my eyelids. It was just orange and red. And the information that I was getting, it
Yeah.
wasn't super clear visually in the way that we see with
Mm,
our physical eyes. But when you look at energy over and over again, there's a certain impression that's there. And so my
mhm,
reading was incredibly detailed and specific. I wasn't super strong with my visual at that moment. It was just I knew the impressions. If you see someone
mm,
who has a headache 15 times in a reading, you get just the slightest coloration of energy and you're like, boom, that's headache energy. You know, you just know.
mm,
So it starts to build up over
true.
time. But yeah, some of these readers, they have no idea if they can read or not. They think they're not seeing because they think it's supposed to look a certain way. And so sometimes I need
Mm,
to change that to perceiving because how you're
mm,
perceiving it, it's not just visual, you know, it's the impression of the energy. Sometimes you have your
mm,
own thoughts and feelings around what you're looking at, and that actually is the energy, you know, but you think it's your own thoughts or feelings, but it's not. It's the impression you're getting from what you're looking at, right?
mm. This is very true for me, actually. Maybe because my energy is a little bit leaking. Yeah, so this is very true for me, actually. Like I might look at somebody and think a certain thing, and all of a sudden they say it, and I before I thought it was my thought. Can we is there a barrier that I can, an energetic like capsule that I can do around my body to keep that all in?
Um, Yes, there definitely is. There's spiritual
Mhm.
tools for having what I call your own energetic space. It's like creating this
Ooh.
bubble around you. And then there's tools to act as kind of like an energetic buffer between you and the rest of the world. Um,
How you mean that? Like a buffer?
So I teach it through visual tools, but you can visualize certain things to have a buffer. So, like for me, if I go out into the world,
Mhm.
I'll give you two scenarios. So first, when I
Mhm.
was in middle school, I would walk through the hallways, and I remember I would get a sense of feeling everybody's energy that was in the school, and I'd even kind of feel like I was leaving my body because I was so
Mm.
attached to knowing where everybody was and what they were doing. I didn't want to be separated from the other people. And I would feel the thoughts and feelings of everybody to where I was kind of
Mm.
like spinning out and didn't know what was me and what wasn't me. Right. And then I learned how to create this energetic buffer. And so then when I finally went back to school years later, that energy from them, it would hit that buffer. And instead of me
Mm.
absorbing it and thinking it's my thought or feeling, I could kind of see it and be like, oh, that's so and so's energy. Oh, they're having a bad day.
Ah.
Oh, that's them in my space wanting something from me.
Um,
And you have the opportunity to not become the effect of it anymore. You can become aware of
mm.
it. And that's a big part of what we're doing is learning to be aware of things because once you make it
Mm.
conscious, then it doesn't affect you. Like if you know who you are and you know what your energy and thoughts are, then
Yeah.
other people's stuff, it can be there. You don't have to hide from the world, be a shut-in, be a hermit. You can be out in the world with total confidence that you might hear those thoughts and feelings, but you'll know they're not yours. And it'll just be interesting.
Yeah, actually, I love being a hermit because of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's better. Sometimes it's also like kind of bypassing the problem itself. Instead of owning your stuff and owning yourself, you just leave the people and not go out or not be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of bypassing. It's not really that healthy and aware, but of course, we do that sometimes, and I myself do that sometimes, or most of the time, by the way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of goes
Um,
in phases too. Like oftentimes when I teach students about
yeah.
energy and their energy versus someone else's, they kind of become shut-ins. And then as they progress further and they get really comfortable using their spiritual tools, they start to realize spirituality is inherent in everything. Everything can be a spiritual experience. And
Mm,
it's about being able to live in the world while not being a victim to it, while being free from it. It's kind of like that metaphor of the monk who goes off into a cave, off far from society and becomes enlightened. What happens when he
mm,
comes back to society and he's amongst all the people, the jobs, all the things that's going on?
yeah.
He loses it right away. It's the person who can be in
Mm,
that enlightened state in it all, can be in the world,
mm,
but not of it. That's the person who's truly free. And that's why I
mm.
teach specific tools and things for people who, live in the world. They don't have to be shut-ins.
Yeah.
They don't have to go hide away in order to do the work. The work
I think I might
involves
need a course or two.
yeah. I think we all do, It's
Yeah.
the world has evolved so far past what our bodies are used to.
Mm,
And so we need something to be able to cope with the rapidly evolving environment that we're in and the social dynamics that are changing. Like the things that we have
yeah.
access to and experience are so vastly different from people even 50 years ago, 100 years
Yeah.
ago. And they put all these things out in the world, make these changes without saying, oh, here's how it might affect you, or here's how to cope with that change. And so that's where
Mm,
I think spiritual tools really come in and play a big role, is they show you how
right.
to take this modernized world and find your own nature within it, you know?
Mm, yeah. Very true. It's not about leaving the world and going somewhere far away. It's not really about that because it is still the world that you're supposed to live in. It's really
And I,
interesting to see how quick everything is moving now. It's not at the speed that
hmm
it was 5 years ago. It's
hmm
way faster. Like I experienced the past 3 weeks as if I had multiple lives. And
hmm
I'm not being dramatic. I genuinely had multiple lives in those 3 weeks. And it's
hmm
not a long period of time. In a month, we have 2025. That's not a long time. So, what's your opinion about that?
about robotics or the multiple lives piece.
Yeah, robotics. No, no. Well, the
uh,
other thing you can say too.
I haven't looked into it too much, to be honest, but I kind of just see AI and robotics as being
Mm,
like anything else that comes forth into the world, where it's just it's another tool that some people will use it in
mm.
malicious ways, some people will use it in
Yeah.
good ways, and it'll help society move forward in some ways.
Mm,
Some people will use it in a way that frees up people's time so that they can do more creative tasks and be a little bit more
yeah.
free. And some people will utilize it to try to do creative tasks. And I think that the expectation of it just coming in and freeing up everybody's time so everybody can do creative work and that there won't need to be a certain level of maintenance. Some people get
Mhm.
into the fear of like losing their jobs or this, that, the other, or like Elon Musk saying, I can't remember exactly what he said, but something about like in the next 10 years, there'll be more robots than people because he thinks every person will have at least one. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to advance that quickly. I don't think it's going to be that
No, not that
extreme.
quickly.
And I think it's going to need a lot of upkeep. I think we have while
Yeah.
some technologies are moving really rapidly, I think it'll mostly just be like, when the internet was invented and it's a new tool and people are figuring it
Yeah.
out and utilizing it. And now there's so many other jobs that are created from it. And so some will melt
Exactly.
away and then new ones will become. And so I just think people should, look at it from a neutral viewpoint, is really
Yeah.
my only take on it.
Yeah. I don't necessarily see it from a completely neutral perspective because I work in it. I like it obviously. So slightly positive. Slightly
Hmm.
more on the
Cool.
positive side. Of course, I am absolutely aware of whatever consequence or pros or cons that come with basically everything on this earth. So it's the same thing. Also, we have to be very responsible and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it depends on the consciousness that is operating whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
But still, how can you have an opinion and still be neutral?
Well, an opinion is kind of like a judgment, right? It's like your personal
Mm,
perspective on it, whereas a completely neutral viewpoint would be more like an observation. It would just be like, here's what I see. Here's what's
mm,
there out in front of me. And you have to be able to, take the splinter or the log out of your own eye in order to see it through a truly neutral, pure observation viewpoint. But even then, there's levels of truth, right? We
mm.
kind of live in a paradoxical universe and there's different levels to truth. For example, to
Very
give you
true.
to give you a reading, I'm stepping up from the level of truth of like, oh, here we're physical bodies and physical beings to, here's you as a spiritual being and
Mm,
here's your life and all these things. But that's actually a step down from seeing you as pure source consciousness. But it wouldn't make for a very fun reading if I'm
mm.
just saying, I see you as pure source consciousness, the world is an illusion, and
Yeah.
there's nothing else here but the oneness of us. Wouldn't be that satisfying of a reading. So there's levels of truth
It
to
was,
everything.
yeah. I would be
Uh,
like, Brandon, come on.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. No, very interesting. How the way you explain it. Very interesting. Continue.
yeah, so there's you could have an opinion where you have a mostly neutral viewpoint of something, but then you have your own, like an opinion, you're taking information from your past experiences, other things you've seen and learned, maybe even something you've inherited. So most people are going off judgments
Mm-hmm.
and opinions. Very few people are actually um practicing neutrally looking. And that's one of the other fun things about having an intuitive practice is you just neutrally look at things over and over and over again. You have no agenda. There's oftentimes no specific outcome. You're just looking, curious, with the eyes of a child to see what's actually there. And so when you learn to view things without your own overlay as to what it means,
Mm-hmm.
you start to actually see it for what it is. That's the practice of doing a reading. But as you do it as a reading, you also learn how to do it with everything else, the people you encounter in your life itself. You start to say, the meaning that I've assigned to this world around me isn't necessarily true. And so, Spirit, help me to see the world around me without that meaning, without any context, ideologies, past experience. And what does that bring you to? It brings you to being present. And in that present moment is where all the miracles happen and where you most easily get to see it from spirit's viewpoint, from just neutral. Here's what it is. Yeah.
That's actually very, very interesting what you said. I learned a lot today, honestly. Especially the thing that you said that stuck with me was that opinions are kind of judgment. That
Hmm.
is very, very interesting. And I started to think about it, and true. Don't necessarily have an agenda with people or with things or outcome expectations for anything or any job or anything in my life, but I do have expectations for myself.
Mm.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also have this overlay when I perceive myself, not necessarily perceiving other things or other people. I perceive them more in a neutral way, but myself, I don't perceive in a neutral way.
Hmm.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's always hardest with ourselves, right? That's
Mm,
who we're the hardest on. And however we're treating or viewing other people, it's usually just a fraction of how we're treating and talking to ourselves and seeing ourselves. And
mm,
sometimes not having an agenda for other people or for certain jobs or things, sometimes that's a healthy thing. It's a healthy, neutral thing where it's just, oh, I'm just open to the experience. And sometimes it
mm,
comes from patterns of being let down or patterns of other people having expectations or judgments towards you. And so you're
mm.
purposely not having them towards other people because you wouldn't want to be treated that way.
Yeah.
And so it's still somewhat a defense mechanism. It's just a nice one, you know?
Mm. Just like a nice one. Just
Yeah.
yeah, coincidentally good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's when you have to go,
Very
ah,
true.
well, how am
I
I
always
treating
think
myself?
about that. I'm not sure how much time we have because I'm not sure if you have a different session after that. Do we still got
Um,
time?
we can go a little longer. Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect, perfect. So that is, I honestly I want to study you right now because you're so calm and so neutral, and it seems. I mean, of course, not working in the job that you don't necessarily like or is outside of your purpose makes you 10 times more happy or more free.
Mm.
No?
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting story with that because
Mm,
when I was like I think I was telling you part of this, but when I was in my corporate job, Spirit told me I had to view that as just as spiritual. And once I did, then I
mm,
would be free to do my passion job full time. And so I had to see that really it's all just as spiritual. It's the meaning that you assign to it and how you're utilizing anything in your world. It's all the teacher, it's all the guru. And so being able to do work that is my passion and where I get to give that fully to people and really beyond that, it absolutely is a huge contributor to my peace, happiness, health, all of that. And ironically, it also has its own difficulties, right? Like when I had a corporate
mm,
job, I kind of joke that money was never a problem, but everything else was. And now
mm,
everything else isn't a problem, but money's a little bit harder as an entrepreneur. You don't
mm.
have health insurance, you don't
Yeah,
have this or that, all those things. It's like it's also that
you're
joke that
actually
they
free.
say, yeah, and it's also that joke that they say I gave up working my 9 to 5, 40 hours a week so that I could work 100 hours a week as an
24,
entrepreneur,
24. Yeah, exactly.
It's like there's some
Yeah,
truth
like,
into that too. So it's really
yeah.
more about how someone's relating to anything that they're doing.
Mm,
Because if you have a picture in your space that says work is punishment, you could be doing your most
mhm,
favorite thing in the world and it's still going to feel bad to you. And so it's more about
mhm,
clearing any mental images, mental overlays, whatever context you've put to anything that you're doing. It's healing that. It's healing your
mm.
relationship and your view of the thing that then makes it sacred. So,
Yeah,
you could be doing any job and it could feel spiritual. It could feel aligned with your purpose because ultimately
very
your
true.
purpose is you. Your purpose is growing, evolving, and bringing awareness to all of the different
Mm,
lessons that pop up within your life. There might also be then a secondary purpose that is more personal that has to do with kind of what you're offering and bringing forth to the world. Uh, but that's
mm.
secondary to your primary purpose, which is you, your life.
Yeah. Mm. I kind of lived that forever to have myself being the purpose, kind of.
Yeah.
But at some point, you will think you are not in your purpose. At some point, you're gonna be like, where did I turn wrong?" Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting that you're saying that. I feel like there is a lot of transformation that is happening even for me because I was kind of in a hermit mode before that for like a year, and it's literally like 1 month ago I started to be less in hermit mode, and I'm out and like really outside almost every day, every single day. So I think there's a lot of transformation, and once I got out, it was like, okay, I understand now why I was supposed to be inside. I was healing so many things on the inside level.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
now I'm seeing the shadows on a deeper level. and it's not even myself seeing, okay, I did this incorrect, I perceive myself to be wrong all the time or whatever. No, I see literally a person that represents exactly what the issue with me is, and they literally say it. It's funny. It's funny because I laugh at it, because I was asking the universe, what is it the thing that I don't see about myself? And it was exact another person just walked into the room and said it. I was I started laughing. I mean, they got mad too, but I was laughing at a completely different thing that I can't explain at this
Mm,
point,
mm,
because again, I wouldn't necessarily explain it. I have my platform for that.
mhm,
But yeah, but it's kind of hard to explain to it's not really out of judgment, just a completely different a person that you just randomly met, to explain all those things to them, you know? So
mhm.
yeah, so that was kind of the case. But I laughed really hard because I was like, something up there is actually listening to me, and I should be more intentional with what I'm asking, or no, kind of trust more that it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
the trust
We
and surrender.
Yeah. Yeah. We all have these questions that are kind of circulating around within us, and then our life experience, the people we meet, the places we're guided to, it reflects the answer to those internal questions that we're asking. And so, you got to start to become aware of what answers, truths are you living off of versus
Yeah.
which ones are creating the chaos in your life. And then you get to
Mm,
start to go, oh, okay, well, let me go ahead and ask a different question, ask it in a different way, get a different
yeah,
answer, different reflection back to us. We're just seeing a
absolutely.
world that reflects who we are. Yeah.
What is one thing you would like to share with the audience?
Hmm. One thing that I'd like to share with the audience is probably that oftentimes the solution is a lot more simple than what we make it out to be in our mind, whether it has to do with purpose, relationship, career, healing, spiritual growth. It's oftentimes a simple answer that we need to spend more time with instead of a more complex answer and needing more information or something outside of us. The answer is always right there in front of you within your life experience, kind of like you were talking about. And it's learning to be able to be aware of that answer and that next
Mm,
step that's there for you. So I would say maybe my message is just don't overcomplicate it, you know?
that's good.
Yeah.
It's a great message, actually. A lot of things are complicated today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very complicated. And our egos like that because it thinks, oh, I'm so complex. My problems must be really
yeah.
complex. So there
It's
must be a really complex
unresolvable.
solution to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But a lot of
yeah.
stuff, it just comes down to how am I viewing the world? How am I viewing myself? What am I telling myself about these things?
Mm,
How am I resisting it in some way? And then the answer
mm,
side being, how can I align with myself and move forward on this new belief? What's a
mhm.
positive other side, 180 that you can take away and
Yeah,
move forward with instead?
yeah.
Yeah.
Random question just came up right now. Why are spiritual people or entrepreneurs, which I think is very spiritual, by the way, um, why do they struggle with money? Is it karma? What is it? Why are we struggling with money? Tell me. What do you think about this?
That's funny. I was gonna make a whole post about this actually. There's kind of a really long answer, and I'm trying to put it in,
Go ahead, for real.
somewhat brief words, but sometimes people that are really spiritual, they've had certain situations in their early childhood that cause them to have to
Mm,
tap into their spiritual abilities more in order to cope or survive. Because in a way, intuition at its most primal biological level is to help you anticipate events sense and to know what's going on in your world around you. Like, is this person dangerous? Is this environment dangerous? Am I going to be able to find food or water here or not? There's a biological purpose
Mm,
to spiritual abilities. And oftentimes there's a certain trauma or experience that happened early on that causes people to be connected to them. But that same sort of childhood trauma, conflict, whatever it is, it can also be one that keeps people ungrounded, dysregulated, not confident in themselves. It can kind of create certain patterns that would make it harder to make money, to create
mm,
it. So that can sometimes be one. And then, the solution to that is you can resolve those original conflicts that happened and still keep the gift. The other
mm-hmm,
reason it can be hard is because when you're playing into the matrix, the system of the world, and you're giving yourself over to it, uh, then the matrix gives back to you. It gives you something.
mm,
So you're not challenging it. You're just going with this flow of what's there. Versus when somebody's on a spiritual path, they're confronting those internal mechanisms that everybody else is using in their day-to-day job, right? So it's kind of like, let me put it this way. If your day-to-day job, it goes with the body's programming of, I need to find safety. I need to be able to attract the best mate. All the things that are success in the world. It's, I have the
mm,
materials. I have the cool car, this or that. And so I can get a good mate. Like it's very superficial and biological where you're
yeah,
just saying, okay, I am that body's programming and I'm going to play by the body's programming's rules.
yeah,
So
it's very
so
primitive.
you're playing into the game of ego, right? Versus
Yeah,
when you're on a spiritual path, you're going, "Oh, I'm actually more than my biological programming and I'm not going to operate from a place of survival. I'm going to operate from a higher level." And so while you're making that journey from the programming upwards, it can feel harder at first because you're going against the grain of
mm-hmm,
ego. You're going against the grain of safety, comfort. That's why they say
yeah,
it in terms of ego death, dark night of the soul. They have all these
yeah,
intense words that go with it because
yeah,
if you're identified as the body that you are, the body programming, then it's confronting to it. It's very scary and challenging. And so when you're in that
mm,
state of letting go of so much, you can feel like you're at lack. You can feel like you don't know who you are. Those safety mechanisms that you have by staying comfortable and just believing you're the body, believing it's programming, it's like it's like if there's a land that's really fruitful, it has a lot of plants,
mm,
animals, whatever. If you just stay there, you're comfortable, you have all you need. But if you want to journey across the mountain range to see what else is possible and go to the other side, you're not going to
yeah,
have as much resources while you're going. But then once you go to the other side, it might be a wide open, beautiful, fully
mm,
resourced plain. And that's kind of the spiritual journey. Once you've gone far enough, you realize that your source and that source is all abundant, all creative, all having, there's no lack. And so once you start to really live as the spirit that you are, that's when you see spiritual people and the entrepreneurs that have the most.
mm,
Their havingness for who they are as a soul, their ability to have all that they are in spirit, it allows
mm,
them to fully have all that there is on earth. So they have the amazing
mm,
relationship, they have plenty of money, they have
yeah,
all these things. But when you're going from one place to the other, it's confronting, you're on that
mm,
journey but between the two places and it can feel a little bit hard. And so it's all a matter of
mm,
disidentifying with that part of you that you're shedding and
mm,
re-identifying with who you really are in spirit.
yeah,
Then you have that
yeah.
abundance again. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I always do, no matter how much money I have, I even if I'm like shit poor, I'll be like, thank you for this experience because I would never be grateful for having things. I know
Mm.
myself. I would just forget it.
Yeah.
It would be like a normal thing, like a thing I have every day, and then I'll forget about it. So really, that's something I kind of started to do like 2 months ago, to be just grateful for every single cent that I have. So yeah, maybe that's kind of also transforming right now, and feel like it's moving through the collective, honestly.
It is. Yeah, the collective's been in
Yeah.
a big growth spurt with that. Yeah, going through a
Yeah.
lot.
And with relationships too, I feel like there's also like a thing moving through the collective with relationships as well.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
I
very
think
interesting.
that
That was important for you to say the last question that you answered with the money thing. See, that was important for somebody. Yeah,
hmm
so thank you so, so much, Brandon. I love this so far. I'll let you know as soon as I post this and all the links and all the stuff. Oh, you have
Sounds
to send
great.
it to me again. Yeah, I hope you
Oh
enjoyed it,
yeah,
Brandon.
I will. I will. It was super fun. Yeah, and you're welcome to send me once you make the brief edit. You can send it to me and I can post it on my own channel too.
Absolutely.
And I can give it to my assistant who sometimes cuts it up and then she can send it out there too. So if you have anything you want me to link on my side,
Oh,
I'm happy
yeah.
to reverse engineer that a little bit and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, do some
Perfect.
cross marketing in that regards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. And one more thing, actually, because that was interesting for me. Where can people find you? And also, where can people do these 3 months coachings where they read someone?
Yeah, so you can find me at www.brandonjwilcox.com is my website. I also put most of my content information links on Awaken W Brandon on Instagram, Awaken with Brandon.
Mhm.
I have all of that there. And you'll see links where people can actually get free readings from my students anytime. We do them Monday nights, Thursday nights,
Oh,
and Sunday mornings. And so if anyone wants to have a free experience of receiving a reading from 1 to 3 readers that I've trained, you can pop in and do that. Otherwise, all my other links are there.
wow.
I have Awaken with Brandon YouTube channel, all the things. Yeah. And
Yeah,
the
that's kind
free
of
course
interesting.
that you were talking about
Yeah.
it's through Kajabi is the portal for that. And so I'll have that free portal link off my Instagram and off my website as well. Yeah.
Perfect. I'll put it in there too.
Yay.
Yeah. I'm actually interested still in seeing a reading from your students because maybe I'll
Mhm.
become one of your students.
Yeah, totally. You can totally
Yeah,
pop in and get
that would be
one.
so nice.
They always need more practice,
Yeah.
so you can pop in a few times, space them out. You'll get different people each time anyway. And then you can see, because to be
Oh,
honest,
yeah.
like the way that I was reading you, it was maybe 15 to 20% different than how I might do like a traditional paid session because I wanted it to be a little
Oh,
more
really?
conversational and fun for the viewers.
Yeah,
Sometimes when I
it
do a
was.
reading, I just go for like 40 minutes of ranting before I even take a breath. Uh, so, but the students, they're a little more slow paced, they're kind of talking through the steps. So you would get a
Yeah.
sense of what they're actually doing. You being so
Doing.
tapped in already, you'd get a sense
Exactly.
of like, like you'll probably match them and start doing the reading with them as they
Yeah.
go. It'll be like slowed down and easier to like be like, oh, okay, here's
Yeah.
what's going on. Because sometimes they even tell each other like, okay, now read this. Okay, now read this. So you'll see the true format of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I love that. That's actually, I mean, maybe I'm gonna record that too. If they're okay with it, I'm gonna record that too, honestly, to
Yeah,
see.
you could ask them for sure.
Yeah.
They're in breakout rooms on Zoom, so it doesn't automatically record.
Yeah, yeah.
But you can always hold a recorder up to it. I like to use
Oh,
Otter.
yeah.
I use Otter.ai because if I have a session on
Mm-hmm.
my computer, I can put my phone next to it and it'll record
Mm-hmm.
it. It'll give me a transcript. It'll give me a summary. If there was any homework notes, it'll give me those. And then
Perfect.
you can play the audio.
Yeah.
It doesn't do video, but it captures the
Yeah.
screenshot. But I'm sure there's other ways you can record it too.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
I have a screen recorder on the laptop as well, so I can just,
oh yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
easy,
yeah.
easy. Yeah, good
Yeah,
call.
that's gonna be fun, honestly. Yeah, I'm very much contemplating becoming a reader because this would be very much stepping even more into my purpose because I would give readings
Hmm.
as well. So
Yeah,
yeah, big
absolutely.
steps.
I'm doing a new round of teaching people how to read pretty soon.
When?
Uh, the thing is, my new group, they're in class 9 of 12, and then we'll probably
Mm-hmm.
take a week off and then we'll learn how to read. So you could play catch up and go through the recordings to learn the tools. You
Mm,
could play catch up to make it in time for that next round, because it'll probably be, I want to say January, unless I give them a
that's
month
actually
off.
perfect.
Yeah.
The January is actually perfect.
Yeah. So if you want,
Yeah.
I could give you access to the empowerment class recordings. They're about 90 minutes a piece, and yeah, you could just catch up at your own pace. And then if you catch up enough, you could come to the live class too. It might be the wrong
Yeah.
time for you though anyway, so recordings might be easiest, but we are going to do
Yeah.
they're also learning how to heal. They're learning how to connect to spirit guides and do energetic healings and understand
I love
like if
that.
someone has energy in their space, a cord, all those things. So we're going to do like a demo where they get to practice healing on somebody at the end too. So that would be the more important one to make it to live. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the practices, once you learn how to read, there's practices that are on my Sunday morning. So those ones would probably be like a good time for you to be able to practice live. Because
Mm,
classes work the same, whether it's recorded
interesting.
or not, but the practice, you do want to make it to
Yeah.
live. To do as many of those as
Yeah.
possible because you get to match the other readers in the room, see how they're doing it. You're in a line, so you don't have to say
Mm,
anything the first few times you're in it. You get to just take baby
yes.
steps. Like we have the best um actual ways to practice and utilize things. Most people just teach it quick and then good luck, you're on your own. If for me, if
Mm.
somebody's taken my reading program, they can forever go to practices for free for the rest of their life to get in and get the growth, get the it's like a free gym membership if you've just done,
Yeah, I'm
the
gonna
intro
say
course.
that. Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, we
It's a
could.
connection also for life.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the friends you make in there and stuff are often like yeah,
Yeah. It's a
people I did my
community
training with, I'm
actually.
still friends with to this day, 12 years
Yeah.
later. So it's yeah, it's
I
definitely
love that.
special. Yeah.
Yeah. My gosh, this will be an amazing episode again. I love this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll give you access to the to the what's called the empowerment course, which is the
Yeah.
stuff you have to learn before you can learn how to read. So you can just move through that, and you can message me if you have any questions. You can join our Slack
Perfect.
group if you want to see the community.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'll just gift you the empowerment program. You
Well,
can have
thank you.
it. And
Thank you
then
so
you can
much.
just pay for the reading program part afterwards if
Yeah.
you want to do that. So we can do it that way.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Thank you so, so much, Brandon. I
Yeah.
hope you have a nice evening. I'm looking forward to all the new links, and I'll let you know as soon as I post this.
Sounds great. This is so
Thank you.
fun.
It was my
Yeah.
pleasure.